I'm your host, Chloe, and welcome to Whispers of Southern Ohio. This is the show where we slow down, lean in, and let the land do the talking. Tonight, we're sitting with a story that belongs not just to one county, not just to one era, but to a place shaped by human hands and human lives for more than 2,000 years. We're talking about Ross County, Ohio, and the episode is called Ross County, Where the Past Never Fully Leaves. Joining me tonight is Mark H. Rowe, author, researcher, and the voice behind this very podcast series. Mark has spent years walking those hills, sitting with those stories, and putting language to something that most people only feel. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Chloe. It's always good to come back to this conversation. Ross County is one of those places that does not leave you. I've written about it, I've talked about it, I've driven those back roads at 2 a.m, and every time I find something new, or something finds me.
Something finds you. I think that's exactly the right way to put it, because Ross County isn't just a setting, it's almost a presence.
That's exactly right. The history is remarkable on its own terms, the earthworks, the capital city, the rivers. But underneath all of that documented record, there is something you feel in your chest when you stand on the right hilltop at the right hour. Something old, something that hasn't finished with people yet.
We're going to go deep tonight, so if you're somewhere quiet, settle in. This one moves slowly, and it's meant to.
Let me offer you a way into the mood of what we're discussing tonight. There is a county in southern Ohio where the past doesn't announce itself with monuments or plaques. It announces itself in the way fog rises off the Scioto River at 4 a.m, in the way certain fields go quiet on a warm night when there's no reason for them to be quiet, in the way old-timers look at you when you ask too many questions about certain stretches of road. Ross County does not advertise its depth, but it has been shaped by human hands for 2,000 years, and it does not forget any of it.
2,000 years. That lands differently when you're standing in it.
It does. And tonight, we're going to stand in it together.
Let's start at the very beginning. When most people think of Ross County, they think of Chillicothe, maybe the outdoor drama, maybe Ohio's early statehood. But the story goes back so much further. Mark, walk us in.
You have to start with the ground, literally. If you've ever driven south on Route 23 into Ross County, you've probably noticed the landscape changes. The hills thicken, the valleys deepen. And if you know what you're looking for, you start to see shapes that don't quite belong to nature alone.
The earthworks?
The earthworks. The Hopewell culture, which flourished here roughly 2,000 years ago, built ceremonial structures of such geometric precision that they still confound researchers today. Massive enclosures, circular, octagonal, aligned to the movements of the moon and sun, spread across miles of Ohio landscape. And the epicenter of much of that activity was right here in Ross County.
The Hopewell ceremonial earthworks are now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which tells you something about the scale of what was built here.
These were not simple mounds. These were carefully engineered landscapes. The Mound City complex right outside Chillicothe, the earthworks enclosures along the Scioto, they were built to last, and they did. They survived centuries of plowing, development, and neglect. When you walk among them, you feel the deliberateness of what was placed there, the intentionality.
What do we know about the people who built them?
The Hopewell weren't a single tribe in the way we might think of it. They were a cultural network, a web of communities stretching from the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes, bound by shared ceremonial traditions and shared beliefs about the dead and the cosmos. And Ross County was the heart of that network. The Scioto and Paint Creek provided corridors for trade and pilgrimage. People came from hundreds, even thousands of miles away to bury their honored dead and leave offerings.
Which means Ross County was sacred ground, a destination, a convergence point.
And I think that matters when you try to understand the energy of the place today. There is something about land that has been consecrated repeatedly over centuries that holds a charge. The accumulated weight of human meaning is real. You can feel it in the quality of the air on certain mornings, in the particular silence that settles over the valley after dark.
After the Hopewell, the Shawnee, which is its own profound chapter.
By the time European settlers arrived, the Shawnee had established towns along the Scioto and Paint Creek valleys that were vibrant, complex communities. Old Chillicothe, Lower Shawneetown. These were established places with their own social architecture, their own traditions, their own deep relationship to the land.
And the name Chillicothe itself is Shawnee.
It is. Chillicothe, which roughly translates to the place of the principal town. The Shawnee used the name for their principal settlements wherever they established them, and the fact that the city carries that name today is not incidental. It's a memory that persisted through displacement and through the long grief of removal. The land kept the name even when the people were forced from it.
That is a heavy thing to sit with.
It is. The Shawnee were removed from this land through treaty pressures, military campaigns, and the relentless push of American expansion. What they left behind is not just physical sites, it's a spiritual imprint, a before that never entirely disappears. And I think people in Ross County sense that, even when they don't have language for it.
And then Chillicothe becomes a capital, first a territorial capital, then briefly the state capital of Ohio.
Chillicothe was the seat of Ohio's first territorial government, the capital of the Northwest Territory. Then, when Ohio achieved statehood in 1803, it was the first and third state capital. For a moment in American history, this small city in the hills of southern Ohio was where decisions about the future of the region were being made. There is a grandeur to that history that people in the county still carry with quiet pride.
And then Columbus took the capital title, and Chillicothe became something harder to define.
Yes, and I think that transition from center of power to something more interior is part of what gives the county its character. There's a dignity there that doesn't need external validation. The county knows what it is. It knows what happened here, and it holds that knowledge quietly, sometimes fiercely, and always with a sense that the past is not done.
Tell me about the landscape itself. For people who haven't been there, it's hard to understand how much the physical terrain shapes the experience.
The hills are the first thing. Ross County is hill country. You're on the edge of the Appalachian Plateau, and those ridgelines enclose. They separate the valleys into something that feels almost like rooms in a house. Each hollow has its own character, and when the fog comes in, which it does, especially near the rivers, visibility drops and the world becomes very small and very old all at once.
There is something about Appalachian fog that I think is genuinely unlike fog anywhere else.
It settles differently. It clings. And in a county with as much buried history as Ross County, fog becomes almost metaphorical. What the land chooses to show you and what it keeps back. I've had conversations with longtime residents who speak about the land the way you might speak about a person, as something with agency, as something that pays attention.
That brings us to the folklore. What are people in Ross County reporting?
What I've encountered is not carnival-style ghost hunting. It's quieter than that. It's people at the end of a long conversation, after real trust has been built, leaning forward and saying, "I've seen something," or "My grandmother always said you don't go past that cemetery after dark," or "There's a stretch of road on the south end of the county where the temperature drops, even in summer, and everybody knows about it, but nobody talks about it directly."
The kind of things that accumulate in a community over generations.
Exactly. And these accounts tend to cluster around the oldest sites, the areas near the earthworks, the old river bottomland, the hilltops that would have been ceremonially significant to the Hopewell and later to the Shawnee. Mound City generates accounts consistently. People describe a feeling of being watched, of the air being different, heavier. And I take those accounts seriously, not necessarily as evidence of the supernatural, but as evidence of how deeply the land holds what has been done within it.
Let's talk about the Scioto River, because it runs through everything you're describing, literally and figuratively.
The Scioto is the spine of Ross County. It drains the whole region. For the Hopewell, it was the highway, canoes moving ceremonial goods and pilgrims up and down its length for centuries. For the Shawnee, it was home water. For the early settlers, it was sustenance and power. And today, it's still central to the identity of the place. There's a quality of light on the Scioto in late afternoon. When the sun hits the water and the valley goes golden, it stops you. The river has seen everything, and it keeps moving. Indifferent in the way that only something very old can be indifferent.
What does Ross County feel like after dark? Because I know you've been out on those roads late.
Once you leave Chillicothe proper and get onto the secondary roads heading into the hollows, the quality of darkness changes. There are no street lights, the hills block the horizon, and if you pull over and sit for a minute, you notice how layered the silence is. Crickets, frogs, an occasional owl, and underneath all of that, a quiet that feels like it has texture, weight. I've had moments out there that I can only describe as feeling watched, not threatened, just noticed. Like the dark contains something old that has been paying attention to this land for a very long time and takes note of whoever passes through.
I want to spend a moment reflecting on what all of this means because I think it's easy to hear this and place it in the category of the spooky and miss the deeper thing you're pointing at.
What I'm describing is not, at its core, a ghost story. It's a story about what happens when land has been inhabited intentionally and reverently for a very long time. Cultures don't vanish. They leave residue. They leave meaning embedded in places. And when a community retains its stories, its oral history, its sense of itself as a people in a particular place, it can feel that residue. It can translate it.
Appalachian culture has always had that relationship to the land as a living thing with memory.
It's one of the most distinctive things about Appalachian identity. The cultural imagination here understands that the past is not past. It sits alongside the present. It speaks if you know how to listen. And Ross County, shaped by the Ohio River watershed and the Appalachian Hill Country, carries that sensibility very deeply. The folklore isn't decoration. It's a form of knowing. It's wisdom encoded in story.
What does that mean for the people living in Ross County today? For someone who grew up there, who drives past the mounds on the way to work?
I think it means you are living inside a story that is still unfinished. The challenges facing communities like Chillicothe are real, and in the middle of all of that, this extraordinary depth of history does not solve any practical problem, but it also does not go away. It provides an anchor, a sense that this place has mattered before and it will matter again. When you know you are standing on ground considered sacred by some of the most sophisticated indigenous cultures North America ever produced, when your city was the seat of a new state's government, you carry yourself differently, even when you don't articulate it. The weight is there. The weight is generative.
The hills hold the history, and the history hold the people.
That's beautifully put, and I believe it's true. The stories help protect the places, and the places keep calling up the stories. It's a living relationship, and Ross County is one of the finest examples of that relationship I have ever encountered.
Thank you for that, Mark. What you do with this project, with the book, with the podcast, is give people a language for something they already feel, and that's an enormous thing.
That's what I'm after. The feeling is already there. I just try to show up with the right questions and enough patience to let the county answer.
And that is the perfect place to leave it tonight. Thank you so much for being here, Mark, and thank you to every one of you listening. If this conversation has stirred something, a memory of a place that felt larger than itself, a road you drove once that stayed with you, carry it gently.
Thank you for joining me on Whispers of Southern Ohio. If you'd like to explore more of my work, you can follow me on my Amazon author page at amazon.com/author/Mark H. Rowe and visit me at markhrowe.com for more stories, books, and updates. Until next time, keep your lantern close and your curiosity closer.